I'm Natalia, the founder of Upskill Me, and I am inviting you to join a conversation about native-like fluency. What is it? And what do we imply? What do I imply when I say the word native-like fluency? It's not a word, it's a word combination actually. And what is it specifically that I've been practicing for the last 18 years? And what do I mean? I have a story for you today. Here on this YouTube channel, I'm sharing tips and methodology to acquire native-like fluency because I'm not a native speaker myself, and I'm very well aware of the fact that I'm not going to become one. I'm not going to become a native speaker one day. I know that. You gotta be born in an English-speaking country to be able to speak English like a native speaker. But I also know that it's a very feasible task to speak English with native-like fluency. So what is it? My story begins in Germany. When I came to Germany, I was very young, I was in my 20s, and I already had a teaching degree. I was a qualified English teacher back then. I could teach English to adults, according to my degree. German was my minor. I could teach German to kids at school. I came to Germany with an intention to do my master's. If you want to take a master's program in Germany, and if you're a foreigner, you need to pass the DSH-Prüfung, which is a test that shows that your German skills are enough if you pass the test. It says that your German skills are enough to study at a higher institution in Germany. So my goal was to pass that test. And I've been working hard for a year, because even though I had been learning German for at least 5 years at the university and at least 5 years at school before that, my German was very intermediate. When I came to Germany, I was an au pair. I was staying with a German family and I was helping them take care of the kids, take care of the house. So I was very confident in my ability to speak German, because before I arrived, my German host parents, they had called me from Germany, and we would have nice conversations on the phone, and I was so happy because I could see all my learning efforts pay off, because I could actually hold a conversation with German native speakers and I could understand everything they were saying to me. But as soon as I arrived, the moment I got into the car with the kids, I realized that I know nothing, because it hit me that German couple was actually simplifying their language a lot for me. They wanted me to understand what they were saying. But the kids, the teenage boys, they did not care. They would just come up to me and say, and I was like, I would gasp for air and I could not understand a single word they said, and they did not care. And this lasted for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks that I was in the country. They would come up to me, say something, and if I didn't understand, they would roll their eyes and walk away, and they did not care if I didn't understand what it is that they wanted to tell me. And this was the moment when I realized that my German is far worse than intermediate. It's actually so not enough for the goals that I have. And that was also the moment when I realized that children are one of the best teachers. It's just we don't appreciate them as teachers, and we expect somebody experienced, somebody qualified, somebody certified to sit in front of us and teach us and give us a lesson. We pay, they teach, we learn, or at least we think that we learn. But in fact, it's not about having someone to teach you. It's about your own ability to learn. And my job was to learn from those kids as much as I could. The first month was a disaster because I couldn't understand them. And then gradually I learned to understand them and I became more confident. But I was staying with a German family for a year. I lived with them and I would go to a German school every single day. Every evening I would be in a German class, learning more German. I had a very specific goal. I wanted to take the test. And before I could even approach that test, I have to pass C1 or C2, I don't quite remember what it was, but I had to prove that I can study at the university and listen to lectures in German and take tests and write assignments in German and all that stuff. And you know what? To cut the story short, I did pass this test. I passed the DSH-Prüfung with 95%, and I remember as I was doing my speaking exam, my examiners told me that, look, we will have to write 95% because we never write 100%, and it would be just strange that a foreigner, can do 100% because you are a foreigner, but your speaking skills are very good. And I was so happy. Again, I was very happy. I was very pleased with my achievement, and I thought, wow, I did it, and my speaking skills are really good. But in reality, I did everything to take the test. I knew the structure of the exam, so I was getting ready to participate in that event. Let's call it an event. I knew that there was going to be a writing part, a speaking part, a listening part, and I just knew what I was supposed to be ready for. My next lesson begins on campus. I entered the university. I brought them all my papers with pride and confidence, and I was enrolled in the master's program. And the minute I was on campus for the first time, I had this flashback, and I remembered myself in the car with the kids again on my first day in Germany, because it felt exactly the same way. I was surrounded by German native speakers, all students who were speaking German to one another, and they were saying something to me as well, and I could not understand what was going on. I passed the most difficult exam I could. I got the best result, and I was standing there, and that paper, that certificate that I had received meant nothing, and I couldn't do anything with that. So I was surrounded by people who were saying something to me, and I could not respond, and I could not understand, and I could not participate in those conversations. Yes, probably I could understand what they were saying, but I didn't feel free, and I just couldn't catch up. I needed a lot more time to process the information and to jump in and to say something, and I needed to think so much about how I actually could say those phrases. It was terrible. It was a terrible feeling, and I was very lucky that the majority of lectures were in English. I had some friends on campus who were both English and German speakers. They were German native speakers with very good English skills, and I thought, okay, my friends are going to support me because I have to do it now. I have to actually prove to myself that I do speak German, and I wanted to practice my German skills. And you know what? I got so discouraged by my own friends, because every time I would try to say something in German, collect all my willpower and all my efforts and say a phrase in German, and they would look at me and say, Natalia, why don't you just speak English? Because I can't understand what you're saying anyway. And it was like, oh my God, it was so discouraging. And I realized that if I really want to have a good conversation with those people, I should probably stick to English, because I can't hold a conversation in German, at least yet, at least now. I just can't. I could listen to lectures in German, no problem. I could communicate with my teachers and professors, no problem. Writing an assignment in German was a nightmare, and I was just very lucky that I had to write most of the assignments in English. I also remember my worst presentation, the worst presentation in my life. It was in German. Once I delivered a presentation in class. I don't quite remember what it was about, but we had a very cool discipline, the history of film, of course, American film. And the presentation went so well that my professor said, Natalia, that's a good speech. Do you mind giving the same presentation at the Film Museum in Düsseldorf? And I was like, sure, why not? And then he adds, but I want you to make this presentation in German, because our audience in the Film Museum is going to be German speaking. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I remember I was so stressed, and I asked everybody I could to help me translate my presentation into German, because I just couldn't write the same text in German. It didn't flow back then. I really needed to apply a lot of effort. And the best strategy I saw was to translate it word by word from English, and then to memorize it word by word in German. So I was standing there in the Film Museum in Düsseldorf, trembling, holding on to my paper, all red, and I was even afraid to look back at my own slides. And I read every word of my presentation. I looked ridiculous because I was even afraid to move, and that was the worst presentation in my life. And I never wanted to get back to this experience again, because I was not free. I was not managing the situation. I could not talk to the people, and I was embarrassed of the fact that I myself didn't even quite understand what I was reading, what I was delivering. That was just very bad. Trust me, it was very bad. But again, I asked myself, what is it that I am doing wrong? There are no more courses for me anymore. There are no more tests that I can take to prove that my German skills are enough. I already did everything I could. I'm already doing my master's program at a German university, and I still cannot communicate. I can read in German, I can speak German, I can listen to German speech, but I cannot speak, meaning I cannot communicate. That was so bad. That was annoying, that was frustrating, and at the same time, it was relieving because I realized that what I was doing was simply not enough. So my job was to find out what is it that I can do to actually get to the level where I need to be, because the levels that the tests, the certificates, the courses were promising was not enough. There were no more courses anymore. There were no more courses for me. There were no more tests anymore. There were no more textbooks. There were no more teachers. I had to do something on my own because I needed to make sense of my own life in Germany. My master's program took 2 years to complete, and I significantly improved my German skills together with my English skills actually during those 2 years. I knew I did the moment I got on a train in Duisburg, I believe. I still remember that day. I got on a train and I sat down, opened a book and started reading. I was reading a book in Russian, which is my first language. And 2 gentlemen sat behind me and they started speaking German. And they were talking about the problems they had at home, the problems at work. They were complaining, and there was a lot of negative information in that conversation and a lot of complaints. And I was so annoyed. I remember the feeling of being annoyed with that conversation because they didn't let me focus on my book. And then it hit me. Oh my God, I cannot focus on my book because I understand every single word of that conversation, which is something I couldn't even imagine 2 years ago. I was like, oh my God, and then I started listening intentionally, and it was true, it was so. I could hear and understand every single word those gentlemen were saying. I could even repeat every single word they were saying, and I opened my notebook and I started like testing myself. Can I really hear every single word? They would say something and I would write the phrase down, and I was like, yes, I definitely can hear and remember every single word they say, and I can understand it. It felt like they were talking and the text of their conversation was appearing in front of me on an imaginary wall, and I could just read it, you know? That was an interesting sensation. And then, you know, this was the moment when I realized that, hang on a second, I can actually understand German and my German skills have improved. Because if they had been speaking Turkish or Italian or any other language that I don't understand, I wouldn't have cared. I would have continued reading my book and I wouldn't have been distracted. But I was distracted because I could understand that conversation, and I didn't want to be in that conversation. I didn't want to listen to that conversation, but I kind of had to. At that moment, I realized that I did something to help myself improve my German skills. So I started looking back at my experience in retrospect, and I started asking myself, what was it that I was doing to improve my German skills? And when I realized what I was doing and what helped me get to the stage where I could hear and understand every single word that German people say, I started applying it to improving my English skills, because I had to improve my English skills as well. I wrote my master thesis in English. I delivered a ton of presentations in English while I was taking my master's program. I was working in English in Germany as well. I was teaching already back then, and I had to improve my professional competences. I had to improve the way I communicate, listen, present, negotiate in the English language. And I'm gonna share the tips in the second part of the story.